All right, let's dive into something pretty fascinating today. We're going to be looking at Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 60 to 62.
Okay.
And we're going to be looking at it with some insights from Tafsir al-Amthal.
Sounds good.
So you ready to get started?
Yeah, let's do it. These verses are all about the children of Israel, right?
Yeah, they are.
And we've got Prophet Moses in there and some pretty unbelievable events,
Yeah.
miracles, blessings, human nature, even a little bit of complaining. You know how it is.
Yeah, it's like a whole drama,
Yeah, it is.
unfolding in these verses.
Right.
And even though it happened such a long time ago, it's still so relatable,
Yeah, definitely. And before we get into the specifics of the verses themselves, it's important to remember that we'll be referencing Tafsir al-Amthal throughout this deep dive. Think of it as a commentary that helps us understand the deeper meaning behind the verses. So it's like having a really wise scholar whispering in our ears, giving us those insights as we read along.
I like that. So, okay, scene 1, verse 60. We find the children of Israel, led by Prophet Moses, wandering through the desert, right? They're thirsty, desperate for water.
The verse paints such a vivid picture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And recall when Moses prayed for water for his people, so we said, strike the stone with your staff. And there gushed forth from it 12 springs. Every people knew their drinking place.
Wow, 12 springs. One for each tribe.
Exactly.
I mean, could you imagine being in that situation? You're totally hopeless.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, this happens right in front of you.
Right in front of you.
This miracle.
It's a powerful display of Allah's mercy and power, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because there's actually a lot of discussion and debate about, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Like, was it a fixed rock? Was it a portable rock that Moses carried? Was it something else entirely? The Quran kind of leaves it open to interpretation.
It does, yeah.
And, I think that's part of what makes it so fascinating.
It is.
To really think about, what was the nature of this miracle?
And it makes you think, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we know that sometimes water can gush from rocks naturally, right?
Right.
But the timing,
The context
here, it just makes it, undeniably miraculous.
It does, yeah. It's a response to Prophet Moses' prayer.
Yeah.
And it's just this reminder that even in the most, hopeless circumstances, that Allah can provide.
Absolutely.
But then we get to verse 61.
The plot twist. Right?
Yeah, the plot twist. So they get this amazing miracle, and then they start complaining about the food.
They do.
And they said, "O Moses, we cannot endure one kind of food. So call upon your Lord to bring forth for us from what the earth grows, its herbs and its cucumbers, its garlic, its lentils, and its onions."
They literally listed out all the things they're craving.
It's like they forgot about the 12 springs completely.
Right.
And they're just like, but I want this.
But I want this other thing.
Yeah.
It's very human, though, isn't it? We can all relate to wanting something different, even when what we have is perfectly good.
Yeah, for sure. It's like they get this one blessing.
Yeah.
And it's just not enough.
It's never enough.
And then they start questioning Moses.
Yeah.
His leadership, and then even, their belief in Allah.
Their faith, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a downward spiral, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
They go from just wanting a little variety to, questioning everything.
And Moses is like, hold on a second.
Right.
He responded, he says, would you exchange what is better for what is less? Go into any city, and you will indeed have what you have asked.
He's like, are you sure about this?
Yeah, he's trying to remind them, you think you want this, but what you have is actually pretty good.
Right.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you might just get it and then regret it.
And then the consequence of this.
Yeah, the consequences are pretty severe.
Yeah, it says, and humiliation and poverty were stamped upon them, and they returned with anger from Allah.
So they faced both worldly and spiritual consequences. It's key to emphasize that their disbelief and killing of prophets is the real reason, not just the food request. That's right.
Exactly. It's so important we remember that the food was just a symptom of their bigger spiritual issues, as we've been discussing. And this is where the whole concept of misr comes in, which is fascinating because there's a lot of different interpretations of what misr actually means.
Yeah.
Some scholars believe it refers to just any city.
Right.
And it emphasizes that, going back to city life would kind of expose them to more, I guess,
temptations
and tests. Yeah.
Worldly distractions.
Right. But then other scholars see it as like a call to action.
Right.
To strive for liberation. It's like saying your real fulfillment comes from following Allah's will.
Exactly.
and actually working towards righteousness.
Not just satisfying these worldly desires.
Yeah, not just like, oh, I want cucumbers,
Right.
And then some even interpret Misr as Egypt,
Yeah.
which is really interesting because that's the place where they were oppressed before.
Exactly.
And it's almost like a reminder to not forget where you came from, to not forget the hardships you've overcome.
Because you're so fixated on what you think you're lacking now, you've forgotten,
Yeah.
all the blessings you've already received.
It makes you wonder what's driving that discontent, right?
It does.
Is it just, oh, I miss the food from back home?
Yeah. Or is it
something deeper?
Is it a lack of gratitude?
Yeah.
Is it a lack of contentment?
And that's what we'll continue to explore,
As we go on.
Yeah, in the next verse.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, I want to give our listeners a moment just to kind of absorb everything,
Yeah.
what we've discussed so far.
Take it all in.
Yeah. What stands out to you most about these initial verses?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? We see this amazing miracle, and then boom, right.
Yeah.
The children of Israel shift their focus to what they lack. It's a powerful reminder for all of us
It is.
to be grateful for what we have,
Yeah.
even when things are tough.
Yeah, because they were so fixated on these specific foods that they forgot about the bigger picture.
Totally.
The miracle that was happening
Yeah.
right in front of them.
And that theme of gratitude, it's all over the Quran, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And this whole connection between gratitude and faith is even more emphasized in verse 62.
Right, which actually brings us to a much broader message about salvation.
Okay, so let's get into that.
Okay, so verse 62 says, "Indeed, those who believed and those who were Jews or Christians or Sabians, those among them who believed in Allah and the last day and did righteousness, will have their reward with their Lord, and no fear will there be concerning them, nor will they grieve."
Now, this verse, it's caused a bit of debate and misunderstanding,
Yeah.
over the years.
Yeah.
Some people might read it and think, oh, this means all religions are equal.
Right.
Or that you don't need to convert to Islam.
Right.
But we know from the Quran itself, right,
Yeah.
that Islam is the final and most complete revelation.
It is.
So how do we understand this verse then?
That's where careful interpretation is really important, One way to look at it is that those who lived righteously, according to the true teachings of their prophets, before the time of Prophet Muhammad, they may still find salvation.
So it's about acknowledging that those who came before
Yeah.
could have been sincere
Yeah.
and that their good deeds are recognized,
Absolutely.
even if they didn't have access to, like, the full message of Islam.
Right. And it's important to remember that the Quran, it affirms the truth of previous scriptures,
Yeah.
but it also points out that over time, a lot of those scriptures were corrupted or misinterpreted.
So basically, if they had followed the true teachings, of those original scriptures,
Yeah.
they would have eventually recognized Prophet Muhammad.
Right. They would have come to Islam.
Right. I think what it shows that, we have to approach matters of faith with humility
Absolutely.
because at the end of the day, we don't know everything.
Our understanding is limited. Right.
Yeah.
We're human.
And, speaking of seeking the truth, I think it's the perfect time to bring up the story of Salman al-Farisi,
Oh, yeah.
one of the companions of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
His journey is incredible, right?
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It really shows, what it means to be on this lifelong quest for truth.
It does. So picture this. Solomon encounters a monk who introduces him to Christianity, right?
Okay.
And he advises Salman to avoid eating meat sacrificed by disbelievers.
Okay.
And this sparks something in Salman,
Yeah.
His deep desire to find the true path to God.
And this desire sends him on this incredible journey, right?
It does.
He travels to Mosul, he joins a monastery, he immerses himself in worship,
Yeah.
and then eventually he makes his way to Jerusalem,
Yeah.
all in pursuit of, like, spiritual enlightenment.
That was dedicated, wasn't it?
So dedicated.
Yeah.
And then in Jerusalem, an elder monk tells him about a prophet
Yeah.
who's going to appear in Arabia soon.
Gives him signs to recognize him.
Gives some signs, yeah.
Yeah.
And Salman, full of anticipation, he heads to Medina,
He does.
and he encounters Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Yeah.
And when he sees the prophet, he recognizes him immediately.
From those signs, right?
Yeah, the signs that the monk gave
It's
him.
a seal of prophethood.
And he embraces Islam.
Wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It's a beautiful story of, like, seeking
Yeah.
and then finding,
Finding what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Recognizing the truth when it finally appears.
and then it gets even more interesting
It does.
because Salman tells the prophet about his former companions,
Yeah.
the monks he knew, who were also waiting for a prophet,
Yeah.
right? And he talks about how pious they were.
Right.
But then the prophet reveals that those very companions, despite their devotion, would be among the people of hellfire.
It's a bit of a shocker, isn't it?
It is. It challenges our assumptions about salvation.
It does. It really highlights the importance of following that final revelation, which is Islam.
Right, because you could be sincere.
Yeah.
You could be devout.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the complete guidance...
You're not on the right path.
Yeah.
It's not enough.
And this brings us back to the whole idea of miss.
Yeah.
And its different interpretations. So thinking of it as just any city, it's like a reminder that sometimes, going back to a life of comfort and ease,
Yeah.
it can lead us away from spiritual growth.
Right. It can lead us to temptation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then if you see it as a call to action,
right.
it inspires us to strive for something bigger than ourselves.
To work for justice, for liberation, for establishing Allah's will on earth.
And then interpreting Misr as Egypt, it reminds us to not dwell on the past.
Yeah, especially when that past was a time of hardship.
Yeah.
Right? We need to focus on building a better future.
Not on holding on to grievances.
Right. Each of these interpretations, I think they give us these really valuable insights into what it means to be human. It makes us think about what we want, what motivates us, the choices we make in our lives.
And I think it really ties back to that theme of gratitude.
It does.
Recognizing those blessings, big and small.
Yeah.
It helps us appreciate what we have.
Absolutely.
And not always be wanting something else.
Exactly. It's like that saying, gratitude turns what we have into enough.
It does.
And that gratitude, it strengthens our connection to Allah.
Yeah.
It reminds us that everything comes from Him.
Now, before we move on, I want to touch on the mention of the Sabians in this verse.
Oh, the Sabians, yeah. They're a bit of a mystery, aren't they?
They are.
We don't know everything about their origins and beliefs.
Yeah, there's different opinions.
There are, but most scholars agreed that they were monotheistic.
Okay.
They believed in God, they believed in the last day.
And the fact that they're mentioned here, alongside believers, Jews, and Christians, I think it emphasizes that this message is universal.
It does. It's not about being part of a specific group.
Right.
It's about sincerely believing in God.
Yeah.
Striving to live righteously and following the guidance that's been revealed to you.
It's a message of inclusivity and hope.
It is.
It shows that Allah's mercy, it really does encompass all of those who genuinely seek Him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, just those 3 verses, they're so concise.
They are.
But they just cover so much.
They do.
Like we've talked about the miracle of the 12 springs, the dangers of being ungrateful.
Right, and those unchecked desires. Right.
Yeah, and then the whole idea of salvation, and how it's not just about saying you believe,
right,
but actually, following the most complete revelation.
Yeah, putting it into practice.
And I think what strikes me is how relevant these stories and teachings still are today,
Absolutely. Centuries later, and they still resonate, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
I think one of the most powerful takeaways, at least for me, is that emphasis on aligning our actions with our beliefs.
It's not enough to just say you believe, right?
Not enough to just say it.
You have to live it.
Yeah.
That's what verse 62 reminds us, right?
Yeah.
True belief is not just words.
Right.
It's about action.
Yeah, it's about embodying those beliefs.
Yeah, through righteous actions.
And that can take so many different forms, It can be striving for justice.
Yeah.
Showing compassion.
Being grateful.
Yeah, resisting those temptations.
Things that try to lead us astray.
Yeah, it's all about making choices,
Yeah.
that show our commitment to Allah.
Absolutely.
And to His values.
And it's also about constantly seeking knowledge, right?
Yes, definitely.
Refining our understanding.
Yeah.
Making sure our actions are aligned with the most authentic guidance we have.
And that brings us right back to Salman al-Farisi.
Full circle.
Yeah. His journey, it wasn't just about finding the right religion.
Yeah.
It was about seeking truth.
Yeah.
No matter what.
And being willing to accept that truth.
And being willing to accept it.
Even when it challenged him.
Even when it challenged him, yeah. I think his story shows us that, the path to truth, it's not always straightforward.
It's not winding.
There are going to be challenges along the way.
There are going to be challenges, yeah.
But it's a journey worth taking.
Yeah, because ultimately it leads us to a deeper understanding
Yeah.
of ourselves, our purpose,
Yeah.
our connection to Allah.
And it also highlights, the importance of humility,
Absolutely.
Recognizing that we don't know everything.
Our understanding is limited.
Yeah.
We have to be open to learning and growing.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I think the big question is, how do we take these lessons,
Right.
and apply them to our lives?
How do we cultivate gratitude? Right. how do we make choices that actually reflect our faith?
And how do we keep seeking the truth?
It's something to think about, isn't it?
It is.
It's about going beyond just understanding these verses intellectually.
Yeah.
It's about embodying them
Yeah.
in our daily lives.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it's inspired you to reflect on these verses,
Yeah.
and to really consider, how they relate to your own journey,
To your own life.
your faith.
Yeah. And until next time, may Allah guide us all towards truth.